The ATF, at the behest of the Biden administration, is desperately pushing for more firearm background checks so they can keep track of every single gun that changes hands. They want to make it impossible for people to share or exchange guns in private. They call anyone who could possibly profit from a firearm transaction engaged in the business of selling firearms, and therefore required to be licensed to sell firearms or risk prosecution. They also want universal background checks because regular background checks left a tiny bit of that Second Amendment uninfringed. I know what the uninformed are saying. Aren't background checks a good thing? We want to keep guns out of the wrong hands. When left-wing politicians push for things like government-issued licenses to sell a gun to a friend or universal background checks, what they're really creating is more ways to criminalize good people. In 2017, the Government Accountability Office did a study that recognized 8,606,286 NICS background checks. Of those 8.6 million background checks, there were 112,090 denials. Of those 112,090 denials, there were only 12,710 investigations. Now, this tells us that the vast majority of initial denials were false positives. In other words, our government was okay with good people being denied their firearm purchase for no good reason. By the way, do you know how many actual prosecutions there were out of the 112,090 denials? 12. That's right, only 12, which means that in 2017, 12 so-called bad people were prevented from purchasing firearms, while 112,078 good people were prevented from buying firearms and potentially rendered unarmed and helpless due to a failed background check system. In 2021, left-wing media ran wild with the narrative that background checks blocked a record high of 300,000 gun sales. They wanted you to believe that background checks were effective in stopping killers. Well, the ratio of false positive denials didn't change. The only thing that changed was the gun grabbers just stepped up their game of denying and delaying more people the right to purchase a gun. Now, during 2021, 7.6 million, that's 30% of all firearm purchases, were delayed by the NICS system. But in the end, the FBI could only justify denying 1.26%. What are your chances of being delayed or denied a firearm purchase the next time you go into the gun shop? Now, you've heard the story about the New Jersey woman named Carol Bound, who was murdered while she was unconstitutionally delayed and forced to wait for her government-issued permission slip to carry a gun, even after the police knew she was in danger. Well, apparently, the ATF under the Biden administration wants even more background check obstacles in place for you. Because remember, the killers are avoiding this system altogether. Of course, background checks are introduced under the guise of public safety. You see, if the gun grabbers can make the uninformed feel scared, or the compromisers feel like they're doing something good, that's a win for them when it comes to keeping American citizens unarmed and helpless. Now, this new rule would require background checks on the private sale of firearms and would subject hundreds of thousands of law-abiding gun owners to presumptions of criminal guilt, the mercy of failed bureaucratic system, and the unjust risk of federal prosecution. So what's the ATF's new plan? Well, making it nearly impossible for anyone to sell a gun. Plan on selling a firearm to a friend or relative? Well, you better be prepared to obtain a federal firearms license and conduct a background check or face criminal prosecution. History shows us this is nothing more than creating more ways to keep firearms out of the hands of good people and the left's political opposition. Gun Owners of America and Gun Owners Foundation are not having any of it and have partnered with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton in a lawsuit challenging the Biden ATF's new rule to require background checks on private sales of firearms. Louisiana, Mississippi, and Utah also joined in the filing, along with the Tennessee Firearms Association and the Virginia Citizens Defense League in the lawsuit. Now, the suit explains that Biden's new rule goes way beyond the challenges made by Senator John Cornyn in his so-called compromise gun control package, which passed in 2022. Senior Vice President for Gun Owners of America, Eric Pratt, said, "We warned the American public that this legislation brokered by Senator Cornyn was no small compromise. And here we are today filing our second lawsuit challenging a major policy derived from that anti-gun law. Criminalizing untold numbers of Americans for simply selling a firearm in a private party transaction is wrong, unconstitutional, and must be halted by the courts." Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said, "Yet again, Joe Biden is weaponizing the federal bureaucracy to rip up the Constitution and destroy our citizens' Second Amendment rights." I wonder if our founding fathers envisioned a government agency run by anti-gunners regulating the sale and transfer of every single firearm in America, with a faulty system that would falsely entrap good people and prevent them from possessing guns. My guess is that they probably did see this coming or something similar, which is precisely why they wrote the Second Amendment. Thanks for watching Bullet Points. I'm Dan Wos for Gun Owners Foundation. You can find more Second Amendment content and updates at gunowners.com.